A couple things we're going to do differently today. First is we're going to keep the chat open at the end, so if we have any questions. And then the second thing I want to do is just mention everybody, feel free to chat in questions as we're going through stuff, okay? I keep meaning to bring that up. And, you know, I think these are good topics to be able to chat about and ask questions and exchange ideas and experiences that you've all had, right? It's not necessarily about, you know, chatting to me as much as to each other, about sharing experiences and all that. So feel free to do that. So today is a super cool topic, and it's about making contact with the future. And I'm going to start with some little mental gymnastics, and we'll probably go all of 20 minutes on this, just for scheduling purposes, so you're aware. So a little bit of mental gymnastics. So as we all know, right, time, as we've all heard, right, time's an illusion. We've all heard that expression. So a couple things about time and how we see things. So visually, I could be, like right now, we're all looking at each other, okay? But you're seeing me as I was just milliseconds ago, okay? You're not seeing me live. And even if I was right in front of you, okay, you would be seeing me still as I was in the past. Now, it might only be just, you know, milliseconds in the past, but still you're not seeing me live. So we never really see anything live time, because what happens is it takes time for the image to go to, for you to look at the image, process through your eyes and into your brain. And your brain, it's not your brain, it's not your eyes that see anything, it's your brain. So your eyes are basically what's taking in the information, but your brain is what's recognizing it. So it's entirely possible that you could be looking right at something, okay? Something could be right in front of you, but your brain, if your brain doesn't recognize it, then you don't see it. And there's this story, and I don't know how true it is, about the Caribbean tribes as the explorers, the conquistadors, you know, were going through the Caribbean. And because they had never seen sailing ships before, they could see ripples in the water. They actually could see the people, but they couldn't see the ships because they had never seen a ship before, so they didn't know what it was. So, you know, metaphorically, I've heard this enough where there must be some truth to it. Obviously, I don't have that firsthand, but understand that time, as we know it, really is illusionary. And so when we talk about making contact with the future already exists. It exists in all sorts of different iterations. We just haven't picked which one yet. So why don't we just let that settle in for a minute, and we'll start going through what we did last week. So last week we talked about being proactive, and proactive is a choice in your mindset, okay? Things either happen with you or to you, and that's your choice, nobody else's choice. Things happen to you, okay? It's because you're waiting for events to descend on you. If things are going to happen with you, you're rolling along with events, okay? And you're part of the flow, right? You're not resisting, right? And then, you know, challenges, right? Whatever we're challenged by is what we're being called to. So when we're given a challenge, we've talked about markers, and we're going to talk about markers in a little bit, a couple slides from now. So when we're challenged by something, we're not being challenged, okay, just because it's an obstacle. We're being challenged because that's what we're being called to. We're either being called to learn, called to master, called to question, called to mastery, right? It's not about an obstacle, it's about a learning opportunity. So making contact with the future is about being open and aware to possible new and better outcomes. And as I said, they already exist. So all outcomes, you know, think about it as like a fan, you know, like an oriental fan. You know, all these opportunities already exist, right? It's simply a matter of you choosing a pathway to which one you want. And it's all we're talking just about going with the flow with things. And as you're going through the flow, you're making contact with the future about this outcome or that outcome. And then once you get to one outcome, then you're going to be led to another one. And you're going to have multiple choices all the way. So I always like to look at it as holographic, okay? Choices and opportunities are holographic in their nature, right? Where one leads to another, leads to another, and they all exist simultaneously. So when we're talking about making contact with the future, it is really time travel, right? I mean, the future's coming to us, and it's saying, you know, hey, look over here. Here's an opportunity. But see, a lot of times, though, you know, most of the time, we ignore them. We ignore the messages that we're being given. And a lot of times it's because we just prejudge. We just say that, well, that's not possible, or how can that be, or I don't deserve, or more often than not, right? There's not enough time in the day. All these things, right? All these things that are basically, they let us off the hook from understanding where the opportunities are and how do we make contact with the future, okay? Because what happens is that we automatically will prejudge whether something's possible or not. And I have this story that I'll just share with you, and it's one that I think about it all the time. You know, my great-grandmother was born in the late 1800s, and she was born into New York City society. Their family were industrialists, and she married into an industrialist family. But here's the fascinating thing about her life, which I as a little kid, she died when she was 94, I believe, and Garden City, New Jersey, and then Bronx or Brooklyn, excuse me, and then they moved up to New Hampshire. But here's the interesting thing about her life. When I was growing up, I would hear stories. She lived in the social circle where that her friends, she had friends on the Titanic, right? The Titanic was a social event, right? For the elite, societal elite at the time. And so I used to listen to her stories. But so here's somebody who grew up in a period of time when she was born, where electricity was rare. Cars were not, you know, a thing yet. And so she grew up in a period of time that went from no cars and very little electricity, okay, to people landing on the moon. And that's always stuck with me about possibility. Because what that means is, so you go from horse and carriage, okay, to watching people land on the moon, and not only land on the moon, but think about the technology. That technology is being beamed back, watching them land on the moon, like leaving the lunar module and walk around on the moon. That signal's being beamed back, right, to Earth. And so that always stuck with me about what's possible and what isn't. And that's the point of my story, sharing my story, is that I've always understood that as, wow, like anything's possible. So you went from the Wright brothers in 1903 to landing on the moon in 1969, and in 66 years, that's an amazing amount of progress. Right? So, you know, when we judge what's possible and what's not possible, is we start to limit our opportunities. And what happens is now all of a sudden we're blocked off from having contact with the future. All right, because the future's out there, it's just waiting. Okay, because you're going to run into it eventually, right? And the learning and the value is in the journey. It's not in the destination. You know, a lot of times we think, right, that once I get to a place, once I get a thing in a material way, or once I get a degree, or once I get a new house or a new car, or once I get something, right? Or once I get to a place, maybe it's a country or whatever the case may be, right? Once we have this sense about about it's the destination, right? And it's nothing to do with the destination. It's always only about the journey. The journey is where all the learning is. The destination doesn't matter. I mean, when you go, you know, I'm not degreed in any way. But, you know, for those of you who worked hard to get your degrees, you know, right? It was the journey to getting the degree. It wasn't the day you got the degree. The day you got the degree was the celebration for all the work you did, but all the learning you did was behind that, right? And that's what life is like. Life is about the journey. It's not about the destination. The destination is irrelevant, okay? And I think we forget that. I think sometimes we forget the fact that the learning is in the destination, right? And so listening to when the future's calling you, and I think maybe that might be best viewed when we were talking about synchronicities a few weeks ago. And so when we start thinking about possibilities, you know, a lot of times what will happen is that they'll come to us in forms of synchronicities. You know, what we might call coincidences, which of course aren't. You know, there are basically events that line up that lead us into a certain direction. And so when the future is talking to us, it could be an idea you have, or it could be a vision you have, or it could be that you've seen the same thing 3 times or 2 times, right? Or you have 2 different friends that have both said the same thing to you. Hey, have you ever thought about doing this, right? You know, all those types of things is when the future is talking to you, okay? Is when it's reaching out to you and it's saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm over here, pay attention, right? And remember, we talked about synchronicities as a string of events that seem to be, that are highly symbolic and they're meaningful in their nature. But at the beginning, you know, when you see like one of them, like you don't really know how they're connected. So they seem random until you start to string them together. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't random. That's why it's so important to pay attention to things. So it's not every little thing, okay? When the future's trying to get your attention, when you're trying to make contact with it, it's not every little thing that matters. It's the things that resonate with you. It's the things that really get your attention, right? And those are the things, okay, that are calling out to you to pay attention to what's going on. And we'll talk when we close today. I've got a series of steps for you to take that will help you kind of better identify what those are. And we talked about markers a few weeks ago. So markers and synchronicities, okay, are all in the same family. They're cousins to each other. And, you know, markers are those things that, as I was just saying, kind of get your attention, all right? That's the future, okay? The markers and the synchronicities are getting your attention for the future. Now, here's where it's a choice between being proactive or not, okay? If you are paying attention to them and you're willing to accept, okay, the fact that information is coming to you, right? If you're willing to accept that, then you'll end up finding these markers along the way. But here's what happens. It happens to all of us, okay? And I think I'll share a story with you in just a second, right? So when we talk about the markers, it's really a matter of what we're paying attention to and what gets our attention. But more often than not, okay, for good reason, we have life that gets in the way. So distractions, right? Kids, work, you know, projects, our own sense of what's possible, what's not possible. You know, our belief system. You know, one of the reasons why I chose the two children for the opening slide is because that you know, when we're younger, we don't know what's not possible. Everything's possible, right? And so if we kind of go back to that childhood curiosity about what is available to us and what can we do, and that really everything is available to us if we choose it. Then we're going to be more open to the markers as they go along. And I'll just share this quick story with you. So I've been in my current house for 14 years in Keene, and I love my house. And I just finished renovating. I have the loft area and the kids' bathroom upstairs. And you know, I was sitting in the living room, and this was a couple months ago, or a month ago. And I was sitting in the living room, and I had this sense of completion come over me, that I'm complete here. Like the house has totally been renovated. I've been there for 14 years, so it's a little bit out of time. And I brought my kids up there and all that. And so for me, it's been a special place for my family. And but I had this sense of completion kind of wash over me. Right now, I'm sharing something very personal with you because my house is something that it's just been kind of my sanctuary. And so I had this sense of completeness wash over me. And I could have looked at it and said, well, it's a sense of satisfaction for completing kind of the project, right? The project being the house. But I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, it feels like I'm done here. And I immediately went on to MLS, which I never do, oddly enough, but real estate. But I went on to MLS, and a house that I looked at 15 years ago, that I've almost bought twice, actually, 10 years ago and 15 years ago, had just come on the market. And it's one of the houses I've always admired in Keene. It's the kids, I grew up with the family that lived there, and I spent some time there as a kid, as a guest of the children. And then I bought it. And so, but had I not thought about it, had I not just taken in that information, okay, yeah, I might have missed that opportunity. And it's the right time, and I'm ready for a new project. And so it's those types of things that you pay attention to. And I said, as that feeling washed over me, I immediately turned to my laptop and did the search, and then had it under agreement a couple of days later. And that might be a little bit of an extreme, because buying a house, of course, as we know, is a very life-changing event for people. But I think it's a good illustration of what, when you're making contact with the future. It's a matter of how you're feeling things and then how you reach out to it. And those are markers and synchronicities. I'm going to encourage you to read these on your own, but the Hermetic principles refer to knowledge of the laws by which the universe operates. And it was written by Hermes. And Hermes is a Greek figure, but kind of quasi mystical. In other words, like, did he really exist, or is this a compilation of other works, by various different philosophers of the time? But nevertheless, they're very powerful. And so there's 7 of them. But one of the things I want to bring you to is the Hermetic principle of cause and effect. And you can just go look at if you just want to Google these on your own, just Google Hermetic principles. But the Hermetic principle of cause and effect, and I'll just read it here, is that every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Now, the law they're talking about is the Hermetic principle law. Chance is but a name for the law not recognized. Chance is but a name for the law not recognized. In other words, there are no coincidences, okay? Everything happens for a reason if we're paying attention. And that's what I wanted you I wanted to show this with you, because they're very powerful if you read them. And they're very true as well, right? One of the other ones we talk about is the law of vibration, right? Is that nothing rests, everything moves, everything always vibrates. Everything is in motion. So this computer, this camera, right? This Logitech video camera you are seeing me on, that is in a state of decay right now. You can't see it, but it's in a state of decay. And so everything moves, every situation, right? Every relationship situation we have, me living in my house for 14 years and then deciding to move, somewhat spontaneously, okay? Although not spontaneously, because I was being called. It was, I got an option. I got an option if I paid attention to this, right? If I paid attention to that feeling that I had at the time. And so everything is in a constant state of motion, and everything has a cause and effect, okay? And that's the future. That's making contact with the future once you understand that. And I want to just take a step back and just clarify something. This isn't about bouncing around all over the place, okay? This is about taking in information, taking it in a thoughtful way, and being curious about what options that are out there. So just real quickly as we start to finish out our known past versus our unknown future, there's no reason to look back when you have so much to look forward to. So much of what influences our moving forward is based on our known past, not the unknown future. We talked about this before. People get nervous about the future. There's nothing to be nervous about. It is up to you to decide what it's going to be. So if it's up to you, why would you be nervous about it, right? But our known pasts and the feelings and the emotions that we bring forward, okay, from past experiences really impact our view of the future. But know that the future really is yours to decide, and that's about making contact with the future. So how does the future get your attention? So here are some steps, some things to pay attention to. The first is, you know internally that you need a change in some part of your life. You feel it and you know it, okay? You hear it, right? That little voice, okay? The voice that we ignore a lot, all right? Don't ignore it, okay? It's telling you something. You're in repeating cycles, and repeating cycles are, and we've talked about cycles it was probably maybe 6-7 weeks ago. We talked about cycles. Repeating cycles. So once we know we're in a cycle, okay, that might not be the best for us, or a cycle that we're kind of getting tired of. And this isn't cycles about like eating well and sleeping well and exercise and good relationships, right? You know, that's not a cycle, right? But a cycle of, you know, the kind of the same circumstances happen over and over again. You have to stop and take a look at it. Well, repeating cycles are about the past. They're not about the future. Once you break a cycle, okay, then you're leading your way into the future. So understanding when you're in a repeating cycle, kind of being honest with yourself about it. And this happened to me before, right? And so understanding what repeating cycles are. Understand cycles are about the past, not about the future. You hear the same themes for change over and over again. So a little bit like the first one we talked about. You hear and see themes, okay? Maybe not directed at you. You might see them in a movie. You might be reading a book, an article, talking to a friend, but themes that seem to resonate with you about change. The fourth one is that you're being presented with the same or similar opportunities all the time. So the universe is kind of interesting, right? It almost has a little bit of a sense of humor. It will keep presenting things to you, all right? It will keep presenting things to you until you pay attention to it one way or the other, until it gets your attention, all right? And so that's what you want to be aware of. You're being similar opportunities, you know, similar people, similar themes. All these are constantly being presented to you until you start to pay attention to it. The fifth one, be aware of synchronicities and markers. So we just spent a fair amount of time on that. When you're being rapidly presented with new people, places, and experiences that match your emotions. So when you're feeling like you need change, or you're feeling like something needs to be changed up, or these themes are being called to you, that all of a sudden, at the same time, you're being presented with experience that actually match the emotion that you're feeling around it, okay? And you almost look at it as if it's an overlay between your, you know, what you're feeling inside, and then all of a sudden you get these people, places, and experiences that you can identify with, and they come at really kind of an emotional level. And then lastly, which is probably the most important, is the rule of threes. I was taught the rule of threes. So the rule of three is, if I hear something 3 times, I'm being called to do something. So if I hear something once, okay, I hear from somebody else, I read it, something resonates with me, it's in a dream, whatever the case, however it resonates with you. Once something resonates with me once, okay, and I'm aware of it, okay, like I got my attention. Then it happens, right? Then it happens again. Now, could be over a day, could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, it doesn't matter, okay? It's a matter of what resonates with you. So once, oh, okay, you got my attention. 2, second time, it's like, huh, all right, I'm more curious about this now. Once you hear it 3 times, you're being called to act. It's the law of threes, and it's simple, but it's super important. So we don't have any chats. Anybody like to chat anything in or experiences that you shared? So, okay, well, next time. And as you got questions or anything like that, you guys all know that you're certainly more than welcome to email me. And as we start our next section next week, which we'll be talking more about the future and how to make contact with it, we're going to take it to a different level. We want to start off next week. Go ahead and just chat in some questions. But I'll just leave you with I would look at the Hermetic principles because they're very common sense. And I think you'll get a lot out of it. It looks like there are a couple chats here. You are welcome, Scott. I'm happy to share. I know you guys are in the middle of moving too, so I think we can share each other's pain. And you're welcome, Catherine. I'm happy to do this. Yeah, so Denise, Whitney, that was great. I found my biggest challenge is to be aware and paying attention. And you know what? That is everybody's challenge. It really doesn't matter who it is, right? It's mine, it's everybody's. But it's like everything else, it becomes a habit. So it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to either dissolve the habit or build a habit, right? It's one or the other. So I'm dissolving a bad habit or I'm building a good habit, right? That's how you that's how I look at it. And so once you start to train your brain, and that's your brain with your neural pathways, right, with your synaptic pathways, then you can start to train your brain to be more aware of these things. And I think the big thing is allow, right? I mean, allow these things to happen. Allow the information to wash over you, and believe it to be real. Okay. Because every single thing, we started the last session with one of the Stephen Covey quotes, I think, which was everything is imagined twice, right? Once in your mind, once in reality. And that's really so true. Yeah, Melissa said we'll have this up on the website. This video on the website. So, okay. Great. Well, it's good to be with everybody. And yes, shoot me some emails if you have any questions or anything like that. And I think we start next week. If you got any chats, we can start with those first. Okay. Really great to be with everybody. Have an amazing week. Take care.